Welcome, everyone, to a special episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and today I am bringing you a very special guest who I had the honor and privilege of meeting at a conference in Florida, the 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference. And he gave a presentation talk that totally amazed me, and I am so grateful that he is wanting to come on today and share that with you all. And so I am going to turn it over to my awesome, amazing, informative, well educated, spoken, amazing person, the one, the only, Micah Dank.
Thanks for having me.
So, if for those who aren't familiar, can you give a little bit of your background and what you're going to be talking about?
What I'm going to talk about is basically hidden astrological codes in all the holy texts. Stuff that they don't want you to know, basically.
That is really cool. And so, what got you started in that?
I came across a video one day talking about it, and I realized that's what I wanted to do. So I found some YouTube videos of it, but they didn't really go that deep into it. But it was so interesting. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what makes sense to me. So I just started sharing that with everyone.
That's very cool. And so, your presentation, is it just strictly, your research, or do you compile other people's
It's
research?
like 90% my research and 10% I've borrowed from other people because I thought it was really interesting and it worked with the flow of what I was doing.
Very cool. And so, do you want to get started with it now, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can put it up.
Okay, here we go.
All right. So, 1 second. The scriptures in the Bible are metaphysical, astrological, that's what we're going to go over, anatomical, alchemical, spiritual, esoteric, and mythology. They are not literal, they are not history, they're not reality, and they're not original. So what I wanted to do is explain to you, because as we go on, I'm going to show you patterns, and you're going to be like, yeah, but what does it mean? So I'm going to answer that before I even show you anything. What is the point of this? We take for granted we have calendars, clocks, watches, weathermen. The ancients didn't have any of that. They had sundials. In the Bible, they worked on dream interpretations for harvest. They had to know things. They needed to know Taurus is when you put the plow on the bowl and plant as above, so below. The Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac and was the knowledge of staying alive, the most important thing. They would look at the stars and see all this movement and make stories up about them and pass them down to their children, then them to their children. Eventually, they learned how to write, and they wrote them down, and it evolved from Sumerian to Babylonian to Egyptian to Judaism in the Old Testament, then to the Christians in the New Testament. It even goes into the Quran, which we'll go into. So I'm going to read you this quote right here, which I'm going to read to you a few times today. My point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. That's John Dominic Crissant. So this is the zodiac wheel. So a couple of things I wanted to share with you. Aries is the ram. So if during the story I'm talking about the ram, I'm in Aries. Pisces is the fish. So if I'm talking about the fish, you're talking about Pisces. But if I'm between the two, this is what is known as a cusp or a handover date. These dividing lines don't exist in the sky. They just represent the last 3 days of a sign and the first 3 days of the next sign, where the energies blend and hand over to each other. You may have heard of someone being referred to as a cusp before. That's what these lines refer to. So if you're at the cusp, you could talk about the ram or the fish. The other thing I wanted to share with you was that there are some patterns that you can make, which I wanted to share with you. For example, here's Gemini, right here. So there's patterns you can make. The connecting sign pattern would be Taurus and Cancer because they huddle next to it. Then there's what's known as the opposing sign, which is you go across the zodiac wheel, and that would be Sagittarius. And you'll find that these patterns are always done this way. It's always a connecting sign or an opposing sign. That's how you know these were done on purpose. You're never just going to go from Virgo, the lady with the wheat stalk, to Aquarius because there's no pattern there. It's always going to show the patterns. So there's questions you can ask about in the Bible. How Jesus was able to heal the blind, how he walked on water, how he turned water into wine, why he had 12 disciples, why he was betrayed with a kiss by Judas, why was he dead for 3 days, why is his birthday on December 25th, and all of that is astrology. And I'm going to show you that. So Genesis 1:14, I should say, says, let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. That's the sun and the moon. Let them be signs, that's the zodiac, to mark the seasons, days, and years. And that's what I was telling you about, the Farmer's Almanac. I'm going to explain this to you. Now, each zodiac sign is called a house, or an era, or an eon, or a sign, or a mansion. There are many different words the Bible uses to explain it, but it is the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you the 12 zodiac signs right now and the key words associated with it. So the first sign I talk about is Aquarius, which is represented by the man. Now, technically, Aries begins the year, but the reason I start with Aquarius is because it's the first of the two water signs that I'm going to show you. I'm going to explain to you. The story of Aquarius goes back to the story of Zeus and the young boy. So Zeus saw a young boy on earth that he wanted in heaven, or on Mount Olympus, but the boy's father wouldn't let him go. So Zeus ends up having to bargain with the boy's father. And after a while, he gives him enough stuff, and the boy's father's like, all right, you can take him up. So he takes him up. And while he's up there, he's serving everybody something called ambrosia out of the water pitcher. That's what the gods drank. And he's doing this day in and day out, day in and day out. And he gets so fed up with doing this that he goes one day to the side, or to the edge of the land, and pours it out, just like in this picture. And that causes a great flood on earth. That's where the Greeks get their flood story from. Now, Zeus, who's usually a malevolent, kind of unpredictable, sexually deviant, difficult god, was going to punish him for what he had done. But in a rare moment of self-reflection, he was looking to himself, and he was like, maybe I shouldn't have brought the boy up. You know, it was rare for Zeus, but he was like, maybe I shouldn't have brought him up. He should have been back down with his friends. So what he does is, instead of punishing him, he immortalizes him as the constellation Aquarius. So the keywords would be man, because Aquarius is the sign of the man, whereas Virgo is the sign of the woman. Baptism, because this is how you baptize someone. Water pitcher, because there's a water pitcher in here. Stream, river, pond, lake, ocean, sea. These are water bodies. Now, Aquarius is an air sign in astrology, but because there's water right here, or there's liquid right here, they use it to encode water to mean the water signs. Now, Pisces is the sign of the two fish in the water. This is actually the mutable water sign. So, all the same stuff: stream, river, pond, lake, sea, ocean. So the first two are water. And which water they refer to depends on the patterns in the heavens that they see. Now, Aries is the ram, and in Aries you have March 21st, which is the spring equinox. It's a 12-hour day and a 12-hour night. There's also 3 different types of Passovers that occur during Aries. The first is the astrological Passover. That's when the sun is going to pass over the equator on March 21st, the spring equinox, and make its way back to its height in the summer solstice. In Judaism, this has changed, and the Passover is when the angel of death passes over all the houses in Egypt, and those that don't have the blood of the lamb or the ram, lamb is a baby ram, they have the blood of the ram on their doorposts to protect their firstborn sons from being killed, because the Jews are the people of Aries, whereas the Egyptians were the people of Taurus. And this is why the Jews blow the ram's horn during the holiday, because they're the people of Aries. And in Christianity, the Passover is changed and it becomes the resurrection of God's Son. So for Aries, it's ram, lamb, shepherd, or ram's horn. Taurus is the bull, and when you look at the sky and you see Taurus during the season where it's supposed to be, you know that you need to put the plow on the bull so that you can plant the seeds so you can harvest in Virgo and Libra. So whenever you're talking about bull, ox, calf, which is a baby bull, or cow, which is a female bull, that's Taurus. Gemini is the twins. Yeah.
You mentioned Aries being this associated to the Jewish people and Taurus to the Egyptians. How did you learn and know, like, Taurus Egyptians?
Well, because the age that we're in, the age that we're in tells you that. The age of Taurus was when Egypt was prevalent. Then the Jews come up in the Old Testament. That is from the age of Aries. And then the Christians come up in Pisces. That's the two fish. Jesus feeds the masses with two fish. They explain this in the Bible. And now we're coming into the age of Aquarius. So it's all about the age that was delineated that these people.
I just wanted to be clear, so thank you for that.
Sure. So Gemini is the twins. It's the story of Castor and Pollux Troy. So we're going to get back to those names. Whose sister was Helen of Troy? This is the story of Achilles. So whenever you're talking about twins or brothers, that's Gemini. Cancer is the crab. The crab in ancient Egyptian times was known as the scarab. So whenever you hear crab or beetle, that's Cancer. So why is Cancer the crab? Well, this is December 25th. The sun's going to rise a degree on its axis. On December 26th, an additional degree. December 27th, an additional degree. What I'm showing you right now is not to scale at all. I'm just showing you that every day the sun is going to rise an additional degree as it moves along the zodiac. When it hits the summer solstice up here, that is the summer solstice. That's in Cancer. What it's going to do on June 21st, which is the summer solstice, is that it's not going to rise an additional degree on the 22nd or drop an additional degree on the 22nd. What it does is for 3 days, it's going to walk sideways and stay at that exact same degree, just like the crab walks sideways. That's why it's a crab, because it walks sideways for 3 days. Then on June 25th, it's going to drop a degree. June 26th, an additional degree. And then it's going to show the reverse pattern. And every day it's going to come back down and do the same thing. When it hits December 21st, that is the winter solstice. That is the longest night of the year. That is the shortest day of the year. Where it's going to, the ancients would look outside on December 21st and the sun wouldn't even crack the horizon. So they would say God's son was dead. And then what it's going to do is it's going to walk sideways for 3 days, just like it did in Cancer. So now suddenly God's son was dead for 3 days. Where on December 25th, it's going to come back to life. It's going to rise again. It's going to be born again. The light of the world, the risen Savior, is going to be born again. And it's going to make that same pattern, go all the way up 3 days, go down 3 days, go up 3 days. It's going to do this over and over again. Now, Leo is the king. He's the lion. He's the king of the jungle or the king of the savannah. The ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. So whenever you're talking about lion, lioness, or cub, that's Leo. Virgo is the woman holding the wheat stalk. Remember before when we said that you plant in Taurus? Well, the virgins would cultivate the wheat in Virgo. Look, here's the virgin with the wheat stalk that I'm highlighting right here. The virgins would cultivate the wheat in Virgo in order to make the bread for the year. So whenever you hear virgin or woman, wheat, grain, seed, barley, corn, these are grainy things that were harvested thousands of years ago in the northern hemisphere. You're talking about Virgo. Then Libra is the justice. It's the scales. It's the balance. He's known as the just one. The reason it's the justice is because it judges God's sun as it passes over, or technically passes under, the fall equinox. It begins its descent into winter, into cold, into death. Libra is also wine season, which is when you plant for the grapes in Taurus. You could press the wine here. Libra is also olive season. That's when you cultivate the olives and you make the oil. So all law-related things like law, judge, justice, the just one, divorce, marriage, court, wine, vineyard, wine press, grapes, olive oil or olive oil. All that is Libra. So all law-related things, all grape or wine-related things, and all olive-related things. Scorpio is the scorpion, and he is the betrayer. When a scorpion bites you, it leaves an imprint in your skin that looks like two lips. It's why the mafia has the kiss of death, and it's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with a kiss. So the sun is judged in Libra, and it's betrayed in Scorpio. And then finally here in Sagittarius, this is where the bow and the arrow shoot the sun and inflict further punishment on the sun. Why? Because the last day of Sagittarius is the first day of winter, December 21st. That's the winter solstice. And I already explained to you that the ancients would look out and they would say the sun was dead, and then it was dead for 3 days. So whenever you're talking about horse, bow and arrow, or horseman, that's Sagittarius. Then finally you have Capricorn, which is the goat. Now remember, December 25th, that's Capricorn. So the sun is going to rise a degree every single day, but it starts to climb up what is known as the Great Mountain, which is the zodiac. It starts to climb up during Capricorn, and Capricorn is the goat because the mountain goats are the best animals out there to climb the mountain. So those are the 12 signs. Now, based on those 12 signs, there are names that are given in church for Jesus. Remember, Jesus is the sun right here. You see the sun behind his head. Every picture you'll find on the internet, the sun is behind his head. Even infant Jesus, you'll see the sun behind his head. When the sun, or Jesus, is in Capricorn, the goat, he is the scapegoat of Israel. When the sun is in the sign Aquarius, the sign of the man, he is the son of man. When the sun, or Jesus, is in Pisces, the two fish, he is the fisher of men, and it's also why he feeds the masses with two fish. When the sun is in Aries, or Jesus, he is the Lamb of God, or the Good Shepherd. Cancer, the scarab, the beetle, St. Augustine called Jesus the good beetle. He is the Lion of Judah, also known as Leo, the lady holding the stalk of wheat, Virgo. He is born of a virgin, and he is called the bread of life. Because remember, she's a stalk of wheat. Libra is the scales of justice. He is known as the just one. So these are all names that he's given to in church that are all astrological, that nobody knows any different. Okay, let's continue. Deuteronomy 32. He gave them honey from the cliffs and olive oil from the rocky ground. He gave his people butter from the herd and milk from the flock. He gave them lambs and goats. They had the best rams from Bashan and the finest wheat. They drank the best wine made from the juice of red grapes. But Jeshurun became fat and kicked like a bull. So let's go over this real quick. He gave them honey from the cliffs. Well, right here, this cusp right here, this is June 21st. This is the first day of summer. In the sign Cancer, which is the first day of summer, there's a group of stars like what I'm showing you right here called the Beehive Cluster. So that's where the honey comes from. If you take this right here all the way down to its opposing sign, this is the first day of winter, the last day of Sagittarius. The Milky Way galaxy, is right here in the middle of Sagittarius. So the first day of summer to the first day of winter is actually your land of milk and honey. It's not a place on earth. The olive oil is Libra. The lambs are Aries. The goat is Capricorn. The ram is Aries. The wheat is the lady holding the wheat stalk, Virgo. The wine and the red grapes is Libra. But Jeshurun became fat and kicked like a bull. The bull is Taurus. There are 10 signs in Deuteronomy 32. So now that I've shown you or given you an example of how this works, let me show you how it works with the zodiac. Jesus led his disciples to the Mount of Olives. Well, let me highlight this. To the Mount of Olives after his last Passover, so they could teach him a few more things, pray, then wait for Judas to betray him. While walking to the Mount of Olives, he gave the parable of the true vine. So, Passover takes place in Aries, which is right here. Where right after that, they go to the Mount of Olives. Well, olives are Libra. How do you go from Aries to Libra? It's opposing sign. So this is a pattern right here. While they're in Libra, they're waiting for Judas to betray him. Well, who's the betrayer? Well, that's the connecting sign to Libra. So there's two patterns here. But it says they're waiting for him to betray. So he's not actually in Scorpio. He's still in Libra. While he's in Libra, he gives the parable of the true vine, which has to do with grapes, which has to do with Libra. So here you start in Aries, and then you go opposing sign, and then there's a connecting sign, but you don't actually go there. So there's the patterns right there. Revelation 4:7. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. The first living creature was like a lion, that's Leo. The second was like an ox, that's Taurus. The third had a face like a man, that's Aquarius. The fourth was like a flying eagle. Now, in astrology, the scorpion is the belly-crawling creature. It's the lowest form of life on Earth because it crawls on its belly. But it evolves. Scorpion evolves. And in astrology, it evolves, which is also known as the ascendant. It becomes the eagle. The eagle is the highest flying form of life on Earth. So the eagle is Scorpio. It'll evolve again a couple more times. It'll evolve into the phoenix, which is basically the story of Christ or the story of the sun. It's a flaming ball of life that dies and is reborn from its ashes, just like I showed you that it does on December 21st, comes back to life December 25th. So Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio are the four fixed signs of the zodiac. So what does that mean? You have 12 signs, and you have 4 seasons, so there's 3 signs in each season. This right here is summer. The next 3 is fall, the next 3 is winter, the next 3 is spring. The first sign, this is the first sign of summer, by the way, Cancer. It's known as the cardinal sign. That's why there's cardinals in church. If I were to break a sign down, I could break them down into 3 10-day segments, astrologically. They're called deacons. That's why you have deacons and cardinals in church, because it's all astrology. The first sign is the cardinal sign. The second sign is the fixed, because it's called the fixed sign because it's in between the 2 signs of the season. The cardinal sign is the first sign in the season, and then the mutable sign is the last sign in the season. So the temperatures are changing. But Leo, Scorpio, that's fall, Aquarius is winter, and Taurus is spring. That's the middle of these seasons. They don't change. They're fixed in the season. So the 4 fixed signs, the first living creature was like a lion, the second was like an ox, the third had a face like a man, and the fourth was like a flying eagle. Literally just makes this pattern in the zodiac. It's not going to be an actual creature in the heavens, which people believe. It's going to be an actual creature. Ezekiel 10:14. Each of the cherubim had 4 faces. One face was that of a cherub, the second the face of a human being, the third the face of a lion, and the fourth the face of an eagle. So it's the same thing. Revelation 12. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail sucked a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. So, a woman clothed with the sun is the sun clothed in Virgo. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the sun being in Virgo, because Virgo is the woman. If the sun is in Virgo, the moon will be at her feet. So to explain this one, let's go here real quick. This is also a clock. There's 12 signs, and there's a 24-hour-a-day clock. The sun spends 2 hours a day in each sign. So right here in Capricorn, this is midnight to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6 right here, because we were looking for Virgo, right? So that's 4 to 6. The sun is in Virgo, the moon will be at her feet. Well, between 4 and 6 p.m., the sun is still out. So if the sun is up, the moon is at her feet. Not literally, but metaphorically, as you see. If the sun is out, the moon is down. If the moon is up, the sun is down. It's basically what they're trying to tell you. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous dragon. Its tail, which I'm highlighting right here, swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. The constellation Draco is the dragon. Its tail goes from Aries to Sagittarius, which is 4/12 of the signs, or 1/3 of the stars out of the sky. Matthew 10,
So
16.
I have a question real quick. We're talking about when the sun is in the sky and the moon is not visible. How does
Right.
it work with astrology when, like, I can look out the window today and the sun is up, but I can see the moon as well? Does it
It's just a
account?
metaphor. It's just a metaphor
Okay.
for it. It's just a
Okay.
metaphor. It's like this: if the sun is out, the moon is down. If the moon is up, the sun. Well, it's not literal, but it's a metaphor, right? When the sun is out, the moon is not at its strongest. When the moon is out, the sun is not out at its strongest.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that right.
Behold, I send you forth as sheep. That's Aries. In the midst of wolves. The opposing sign Libra. In Libra, there's a constellation called Lupus, which means wolf. So there's a pattern right there. So be as wise as serpents. Right here between Scorpio and Sagittarius, you might have heard of a sign called Ophiuchus, which is the serpent handler. The actual constellation is known as Serpens. And harmless as doves. The dove is one of the evolutions of Scorpio. I didn't mention it before. But there's 8 evolutions of Scorpio. It's irrelevant for this, but all you got to know is that from Aries to Libra, that's one pattern. And then the dove is Scorpio, so that's a connecting sign. And then Ophiuchus is another connecting sign. So it's one opposing sign and then 3 connecting signs just in that one little passage. So I've given examples of astrotheology in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament. I've been accused of cherry-picking verses from the Bible to prove a point, so let's take a much longer passage, see if we can decode it as well. What I'm going to read to you is the story of Job. It's going to be Job, the God talking to Job. God answering Job for his 20 pages worth of questions. So the story of Job basically is the story of a man who has everything. He has land, money, family, kids, animals, wealth. He's God's most faithful servant. And then Satan comes up to him and says, listen, the only reason he's faithful is because he has everything. If you take things away, he will curse you. And so God takes the bet and he tells the Satan that you can do anything you want to him, but you can't take his life. So little by little, he starts doing all this stuff to him. He starts losing everything. He never loses his faith, even though he complains to God for about 20 pages. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you God's response to him. Job 38:32. The first thing he says is, can you lead forth the Mazzaroth? The Mazzaroth is intentionally untranslated for Christians. They don't want you to know that the word Mazzaroth translates to the zodiac. Mazzaroth over time becomes the Mazalot, which survives in Judaism today as Mazel Tov. And Mazel Tov means good fortune from the stars. So what is the Lord's challenge to Job? He says, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? That's what he starts off saying. Those are open celestial metaphors like I've been trying to tell you. They've been encoded. Well, these are out in the open like this. Then he says, can you bring forth the constellation in their season or lead out the bear with its cubs? The constellation or the zodiac above. The bear and its cubs are Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor, part of the Big Dipper. Now, if you look at this, the Pleiades are in Taurus. Orion's belt is between Taurus and Gemini. And then the bear and its cubs are in Gemini Cancer. So Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer are 3 zodiac signs in a row. That's how it opens up. Who can tip over the water jars of the heavens? I don't need to show you the slide from Aquarius again, but it's Aquarius. It's the man tipping over the water jars in the heaven. Do you hunt for the prey, for the lioness, and satisfy the hunger of the lions? That's Leo. Leo is the 4th sign in a row. So what we have right here is we have, so far, we have Aquarius down here. And then we have Taurus, the Pleiades, Gemini, Taurus and Gemini, which are Orion's belt. And then you have the bear and its cubs, that's Cancer. And then you have the lion, that's Leo. So you have 4 signs in a row. These are patterns made deliberately. But we can continue reading. Who provides food for the raven? That's the constellation Corvus, which means raven and borders on Virgo. Do you watch the doe when the doe bears her fawn? That's Mriga, meaning deer, and is located in Orion. Who let the wild donkey go free? That's Acellus borealis, meaning donkey, and is located in Cancer. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? That's Taurus. Do you give the horse its strength? So we know the horse is Sagittarius, the man on the horse, with the bow and the arrow. But if you keep reading, it laughs at fear, afraid of nothing. It does not shy away from the sword. The quiver, right here they mention the quiver. What a quiver is it sits on the side of the horse that holds the arrows. So the guy on top of the horse can reach the arrows and fire the arrow. So that's Sagittarius with the bow and the arrow. Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high? The eagle is Scorpio evolved. Finally says, can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook? That's Pisces. Leviathan was an ancient fish god, like Mithra, like Dagon. These are all competing fish deities in the age of Pisces. So what do you have right now? Well, we have Aquarius and Pisces connecting signs. We have Sagittarius and Scorpio connecting signs. And we have these 5 in a row. So this is God's response to Job. If you understand how to read it, the only 3 signs, these are the cardinal signs right here, right? The first sign in spring, fall, and winter. These are the only ones they didn't mention, that God didn't mention. So he didn't mention the ram or the lamb or the shepherd. He didn't mention the goat, and he didn't mention, what was Libra again? It was wine, oil, and law, remember? So this is the patterns that it makes. So answers to the questions at the beginning. How Jesus was able to heal the blind. Jesus being the son can, in the story, Jesus heals the blind man. But the sun does the same thing too. Because when the sun comes down, I am blind. Without external light, everything is pitch black. I cannot see anything. So what the sun has to do is it has to come up in the morning and literally touch my eyes so that I can see. How he walked on water. Well, we've gone over this. Jesus in the story has walked on water. But the sun does the same thing too. If you've ever gone fishing in the morning or the night, and you've seen at dawn or dusk, you've seen the sun travel along the water. And Jesus is known as Christos, which is a title. It means anointed one or oil. Oil also walks on water. So Jesus walking on water, the sun walking on water, and Christos walking on water is a triple entendre. How he turned water into wine. This is not a parlor trick. This is actually an astrological process. So the reason God is considered a man and Mother Earth is considered a woman has to do with one thing. It has to do with the sacred rain, the sacred fluid. In Hebrew, the word is shemen. We get the word semen from it. So you got to think about it like this. God's sacred fluid, the rain, impregnates Mother Earth. It ejaculates and it comes down onto Mother Earth. And it, from her belly, food, life grows, basically. Food, trees, all sorts of things grow. So what happens is, in Taurus, April showers bring May flowers. As above, so below. You see the bowl, you put the plow on the bowl, you plant the grape seeds. And then it waters, it rains, and it rains, and it rains, and it rains, and it rains. And then come hither in Libra, you can pick the grapes and turn them into wine. That's how you turn water into wine. Why he had 12 disciples, we can go over that real quick. Let me go over it with you real quick. Hold on. Oh, that's why. Okay. Okay, sorry. I was confused for a sec. Okay. 12 disciples. Gemini right here, the twins. This would be Thomas Didymus. Because in Hebrew, ta'om, or ta'om, means twin. Didymus in Greek means twin. So this is Thomas Didymus. Libra is James. He's known as the Just One. Scorpio, the Betrayer. This is Judas. Aquarius, John the Baptist right here, who was not one of the original disciples, but when you add the 13th sign, he becomes the 13th disciple. I mean, I just gave you 4 examples right here. You're just going to have to believe me that there's Pisces right here, the 5th one that I'll give you, as my mentor Santos explained. Pisces is the 2 fish, and Simon Peter doesn't really work. Jonathan goes to John, Thomas goes to Tom. But Simon doesn't go to Peter unless you understand astrology. See, Simon or Peter was a fisherman. So the fish is Pisces. The ruling planet of Pisces is Jupiter, or Peter. So that's where the 5th one comes in. So I'm not going to go into all 12. I just wanted to give you, I was going to give you 4, but I gave you 5 examples. Why he was betrayed with a kiss by Judas, we went over that. That's Scorpio. That's the kiss, the lips. Why he was dead for 3 days, we went over that. Why is his birthday on December 25th, we went over that. Now, this science only works for people in the northern hemisphere, and there is a reason for that. The Egyptians, Jews, Christians, and Muslims are all based out of the northern hemisphere. For example, June 21st, the summer solstice, is actually the winter solstice in Australia and New Zealand, much of South Africa and South America. But it doesn't stop there. It's not just random passages in the Bible that can be decoded this way. We're going to go through the entire book of Revelation to show how deep this runs. So, let's go through the book of Revelation. Now, this is Revelation 4:7. This is the 4 fixed signs. We went over this already, remember, with this? So I'm gonna just skip this since we already went over this. Revelation 5:5. Then one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." So the Lion of Judah is Leo. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the 7 seals. Then I heard one of the 4 living creatures, the 4 living creatures of the 4 fixed signs that we went over, say in a voice like thunder, "Come." Well, the Lamb has to open the first seal because the Lamb is Aries, and Aries begins the year. That's why it has to open the first of the 7 seals. Then you have the 4 living creatures. That's the 4 fixed signs. Then you see voice like thunder. In Hebrew, the word for thunder translates to voices because what they thought was that, for example, when Moses was on top of the mountain and they heard all this rumbling and this thunder, they thought that was God speaking. So the word thunder translates to voices in Hebrew. Revelation 6:2. I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow. Who's the horse with the rider holding a bow? That's Sagittarius. That's just openly explaining it. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the 4 living creatures. Again, the 4 living creatures are the 4 fixed signs, saying 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages. So that's 2 examples of Virgo. And do not damage the oil and the wine. Well, the oil and the wine is Libra. So that's 2 examples of Virgo, 2 examples of Libra. And those 2 signs are connecting signs. I watched as he opened the 6th seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red. So the reason they put the goat and the moon together right here like this is because, let me see here, 46. I'll use this one even though it's all shattered right here. Capricorn right here is the goat. And if you go to its opposing sign up here in Cancer, Cancer's ruling planet is the moon. So it makes a pattern right here. So this teaches you how to understand the zodiac is what this is trying to do. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. There are 7 chakras. The root has 4 petals. The sacral has 6. The solar plexus has 10. The heart has 12, and the throat has 16, which equals 48. The third eye chakra is represented by 96 and only has 2 petals because it's 2 times as powerful as the lower chakras. So 48 times 2 is 96. The crown chakra is 1,000 times more powerful than the lower 6 chakras. When you add the lower 6, you get 96 plus 48 equals 144. You times that by 1,000, that's the crown chakra, and you get your 144,000. What they're trying to tell you is when you've activated all your chakras, that is when you get to go see God. It is not a limiting amount of people that get to go see him. They're saying hit your 144,000 when all your chakras are awake. That's when you'll be able to have a divine experience. And out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth and were given power like that of scorpions. So very soon, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to show you that locusts are actually a biblical food source. So that's how they're good. But they were given powers of scorpions. And what did I tell you the power of the scorpion was? Well, the scorpion, he betrays. That's what he does. So how do locusts betray? Well, they're a food source, but too many of them literally become a plague. That's the betrayal, to go from something positive like a food source to something negative like a plague. The locusts look like horses preparing for battle. On their heads, they wore something like crowns of gold. So you have the horse, that's Sagittarius. The crown of gold is the sun in Sagittarius. And their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair. And their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had tails with stingers like scorpions. So you have Sagittarius and the sun in Sagittarius. You have Scorpio. Those two are connecting signs. The woman's face is Virgo and the lion's teeth are Leo. Those are connecting signs. So again, these are two patterns that they're showing you right here. They're trying to teach you the heavens. They're trying to show you through encoding in scripture all these patterns. Remember how I told you there's always going to be a connecting pattern or an opposing pattern. They're never just going to randomly pick a sign out. Like that would be one thing if they randomly picked a sign out to begin with and continued to do that. Then you could be like, oh, I see patterns. But there's more than just patterns here. This is a farmer's almanac trying to teach you what to do when to do it. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. This is Revelation 13:2, by the way. Well, I didn't go over this yet, but I will now. There's a constellation in Gemini, the twins, called Camelopardalis. Camelopardalis. It's a combination of two words, Camelos and Pardalis. Camelos means camel. Pardalis means leopard. The camel leopard, which was the original name for the giraffe, Camelopardalis. They originally called it because they were like, look at this odd-shaped animal with leopard spots. You know, you're a camel leopard. They had no other name for it. That's what they called it. So Ursa Major is in Cancer. That's the bear. And Lion is Leo. So the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. So you have Gemini for Camelopardalis, then the bear's in Cancer, then the lion is Leo. This little sentence shows you 3 signs in a row. Oh, we did Revelation 12 already, so we're going to skip that, okay? This is the dragon. We went over that. Then I saw a second beast, Revelation 13:11, coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like that of a dragon. Well, the lamb is Aries, and the dragon, Draco, its tail starts in Aries. Or it actually, the whole constellation itself starts in Aries. So this is literally just talking about Aries. They just want you to be able to see that for yourself. Cargoes of cinnamon and spice, of incense. I didn't go over this earlier, guys, but myrrh and frankincense, I don't know if you know this, Mike, but myrrh and frankincense are actually olive plants. And what did I tell you olives were? That's Libra. And guess what? Right after that, the wine is Libra, and the olive oil is Libra. The flour and wheat is Virgo. Those are connecting signs, Virgo and Libra. Cattle is Taurus. Sheep is Aries. Aries and Taurus are connecting signs. Horses, that's Sagittarius. And the human beings sold into slaves, well, that's Aries and Virgo. So there's a lot of patterns that they show you. This is Revelation. So my point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. Do you mind if I take a quick 2 seconds to just go pee?
Sure.
Okay. When I come back in like 2 minutes, we're going to go into a deep dive of the book of Matthew, and I'm going to show you more patterns, and I'm going to show you more encodings with scripture. This is going to be great. So just give me a minute, okay?
Okay, I hope you all are enjoying this so far. This is the presentation that I saw, and it is amazing how he's able to put this all together and explain it. So stay tuned for we're gonna jump right into the next part.
still with me?
I am.
Just talking to the audience while I'm gone.
A little bit, just giving a little.
What do you think?
Honestly, I am still just in such awe and amazement that you are able to see all of this and be able to piece it together to where, like, when I look at it and I see, oh, a man on horse, talking about weeds and, being a shepherd, my mind goes, okay, there's a guy on a horse that's a shepherd. I don't go, oh, wait, we have Sagittarius looking at Aquarius that's
Right.
dealing with Libra. And so it amazes me how you're able to piece that together, and it makes more sense because it's like you look
It
at it and
makes
you're
more
like,
sense than taking the book literally, doesn't it?
it does, because when you look at like shepherds being out when he's born in December, it's like shepherds aren't out in December, so that can't be when he's born
Right.
if you go literal. But if you go by the zodiac, it's like, oh, well, that makes sense then why it's December 25th. That I can understand.
Mm-hmm. It's a farmer's almanac. So I think what we're going to do, because I'm looking at this right now and I'm looking at the time, Mike, let's split this into two. I'll get through the first half and then we'll do the previous 6,000 years at another time, and then you just let me know what kind of feedback you get from people, if they like it, if they want me to answer any questions. I'll do questions and do that. Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine.
Okay, so let's get through the book of Matthew at least. Or actually, you know what? There's a little bit more than just the book of Matthew I want to go through. What I've done is I put the zodiac over here and I highlighted, for example, like you could see right here, so you know where everything is. This is just an aid for you to be able to follow along with. Matthew 3:2, repent of your sins and turn to God, for the kingdom of heaven is near. Each gospel begins at one of the four major points. So solstice, solstice, equinox, equinox. Like, incidentally, when you connect them, right? This is the cross of God's Son that he carries throughout the year until his death, which is right here. Okay? Now, Leo, right here, the ruling planet of Leo is the sun. So this is where the gospel begins. Right here, because the closest point to Leo is Cancer. This is already past Leo. This is already not at Leo yet. This is not at Leo yet. The summer solstice, this is where this begins, because this is right here, the kingdom of heaven. This is where the sun rules Leo. This is God right here. And this is the earliest point. So the gospel begins, all gospels begin at one of these four major points. 1, 2, 3, and 4. But it starts here, and I'll show you. Now, this is the cusp right here, the handover date. Remember, I told you, Cancer's the crab, and Leo's the lion. If you're in Cancer, you could talk about Cancer. If you're in Leo, you could talk about Leo. But if you're in between both, at the cusp, you can talk about either or. Matthew 3:4. John's clothes were woven from coarse camel hair, and he wore a leather belt around his waist. For food, he ate locusts and wild honey. Now, if we take the most famous drawing of a man, Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, and superimpose it onto the zodiac, we can make sense of this. Incidentally, I've been told by Christians that the Vitruvian Man didn't exist thousands of years ago, so there's no way this was used. I use the Vitruvian Man for aesthetic purposes just because I like it, but you could really honestly use a stick figure. It doesn't matter. Just outline a man and put it on the... I'll show you. For example, right here. Cancer is the head, so here's his mouth. And the beehive cluster is in Cancer, so he's eating the honey. The mouth, he's eating the honey. Now, Leviticus 11, remember I told you I was going to show you about the locusts, right, as food source. Right. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be regarded as unclean by you. There are, however, some flying insects that walk on all fours that you may eat. Those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of those you may eat any kind of locust. So this is why he eats the locusts and the wild honey, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. So, just so you know, when they try and tell you this, a pound of grasshoppers is 3 times as nutritious as a pound of beef. Remember, they're trying to push eating bugs, right? They're trying to push eating bugs. Well, it goes back to Leviticus 11. It's biblical. That's where they're getting it from. They're not just pulling it out of their ass. So Leo was the kingdom of heaven because the sun rules Leo and the sun is Christ. Cancer, right here, the beehive cluster, he's eating it. Gemini is a little lower down on the body, so that would kind of be like something like here, right? This would be like a shirt or something, right? A little lower on the body is a clothes made out of camel hair, or camelopardalis, which is in Gemini. Now, in Taurus, this is a little lower down the body, so this is like the midsection. This is like where you would wear, I don't know, like a belt or something, right?
Right.
Right? Okay. Well, Taurus represents the bull, and the female is the cow, and the cow is where you get the leather from. Regarding the belt part, Orion's belt is right here between Taurus and Gemini. So just so we're keeping score, we started in Leo, then we went to Cancer, the mouth, the beehive cluster. Then we went to Gemini, that's the camel shirt, camelopardalis. Now we're in Taurus with Orion's belt and the leather belt. So that's 4 signs in a row. 4 signs in a row. You could see this right here. Each one of these zodiac signs is a piece of the story. And the way that you arrange them or make patterns can change stories. And that's what the Bible is. They're a collection of stories about a farmer's almanac that are teaching you, based on the keywords, based on what they mean, based on what they show definitive patterns. Now, next would be the baptism. So we started here at the beginning of Leo. Now, how are we going to go to a water sign to signify the baptism? Well, all you got to do is find its opposing sign. Remember, connecting signs, opposing signs. Well, right here, you're touching Aquarius. That's the man with the baptism. Here we see how it makes a leap from one cusp to the other. The man with the water pitcher in Aquarius is personified as John the Baptist with the water. It's important to note, too, that John the Baptist and Jesus are always exactly 6 months apart. When you think about the fact that Jesus is born on December 25th right here and goes up a degree a day, then that must mean that John the Baptist is here at June 24th and decrease a degree a day. This is why in John 3:30, John says he must increase, but I must decrease. And it's also why St. John's Day, open a Catholic calendar. When is St. John's Day? It's June 24th. That's exactly 6 months to the day of Christmas. So now what happens next? Well, next is he's tempted by the devil, by Satan in the desert for 40 days, right? So we started at July. We started here. This is where we started, the beginning of Leo. And he's tempted for 40 days. Well, this is actually really simple. So you have July 24th. Count 40 days. That takes you to September 2nd. That's right in the middle of Virgo, the lady with the wheat stalk, the bread, remember? Right. Well, what's the very next passage? Matthew 4:3. If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become loaves of bread. Here we see mention of the bread, which tells you that the sun is in Virgo. So now we have Leo, and then we went to Virgo, and now we're in Libra, which is law, wine, and oil, remember? So what are the next passages? Matthew 5:17 and 22. I did not come to abolish the law, and if you are even angry with someone, you are subject to judgment. Both law and judgment are Libra. So we went 4 signs this way, and now we went 3 signs this way. So the beginning of the story connects 7 zodiac signs in a row. Do you see how this is starting to work out?
I do, and it seems like it's mapping, and it's like it almost is creating designs within itself, and so
correct.
It's like...
Absolutely. And I'm going to show you how Scripture is written in a hot second too. So Matthew 7:15 and 16. Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep. The sheep is Aries right here. And can you pick grapes from the thorn bushes? Well, the grapes are in Libra. Those are opposing signs. There's another pattern. Once again, they're opposing signs. So moving along, Matthew 13. Later that same day, Jesus left the house and sat beside the lake. So we're going to walk along this. and we're going to sit beside the lake. Now, remember, Aquarius and Pisces are the two water signs, right? If they had said he was in the lake, he'd be in one of the two signs. But the words they use is he's beside the lake. So if he's beside the lake, that's the cusp right here. Well, if you outline the cusp right here, and you follow its opposing sign right here, that's the Leo-Virgo cusp. Well, you're touching Virgo right here, right? So what are the next parables? The wheat and the weeds, the mustard seed, and the yeast. And if you continue to go and you come back, make another opposing sign right here, now you're touching Pisces, the two fish. So now you get the fishing net parable. Gemini is the sign of two men, technically twins. However, there's just a short mention of brothers in the next passage. He's just the carpenter's son, and we know Mary, his mother, and his brothers, James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas. This ends at the cusp of Gemini and Cancer, right? Because we're in Gemini because they're talking about brothers. And Gemini is twins and brothers, remember? Because it's the sign of two boys. Well, if you follow this to its opposing sign, this is December 21st, the cusp of Sagittarius and Capricorn. This is the day of death. What's the next story? The very next story is the death of John the Baptist. As I've mentioned previously, death comes at the end of Sagittarius. So I'm going to pause for a second from Scripture, and I'm going to show you how Scripture is written. So because we've been talking about it the whole time here. So let's take this sentence, which sounds like it could be in the Bible, but isn't. If I say to you, the rulers were divided between war and love, it split the land in half. You could read that as a literal translation, or the ruling planet of Aries is Mars,
who's the god of war,
and the ruling planet of Libra is Venus, who's the goddess of love. There is your war and love. It makes an opposing sign. If you connect it, it literally splits the land, or the rest of the zodiac, in half. These are deeply encoded metaphors, but there is a science to it. Matthew 14, 17, and 32, but we only have 5 loaves of bread, the bread is Virgo, and 2 fish. 2 fish is literally Pisces, but hello, those are also opposing signs. So there's another pattern. This is the cross of God's Son. We were just in Virgo. And now next is Libra, which is law, wine, and oil, remember? What stories do we get now? We get the story of the temple tax, that's law. The unforgiving debtor, that's law. Divorce and marriage, that's law. And the parable of the vineyard worker. Well, the vine has to do with the grapes, which is wine. Virgo and Libra are connecting signs. So you have Virgo and Libra. These two are connecting signs. Then you have Scorpio, the betrayer. This is where Judas betrays Jesus with the kiss. That's 3 signs in a row. And then you have the end of Sagittarius, which makes 4 signs in a row. The death of Christ. So check this out. Astrology is a language. If you understand this language, the sky speaks to you. That's Dane Rudyard. And I understand this language, and that's what I do. I come on endless podcasts with you, with other people, and I try to explain this so people can understand what it is that they actually have in their hands when they're reading this book.
Well, I have a quick question for you, actually, is we talk about the importance of having like 2 signs together, or 3 signs, or 4 signs. Yeah. What actually is the significance of how many signs are combined in one story?
It's just impressive. When we get to the second half of this presentation, I want to come back on soon because I want this fresh in people's heads. But when I come back and I show you the old one, you'll start seeing like 7, 8, 9 signs in a row, which means that number one, this wasn't done. This isn't coincidence. This was intentionally written for people to discover this like this. The more signs in a row, the more you should see this is not a coincidence.
Okay. We were talking about it, but never really stated what significance. Right. So I was trying to bring awareness to that. So
each one of the signs tells a chunk of the story. Let me go here a second. So Cancer, right? So if we're in the part of the story with Cancer, it could be the crab or the scarab, but you also have Acellus borealis, which is the donkey, that's in Cancer. You have Ursa Major, that's the bear, that's in Cancer. You also have the beehive cluster. That's the honey. That's in Cancer. So you have all these keywords that you can use that represent Cancer. And then you combine it with, like when they say happy is the man, or happy is the lion that eats the man. Well, the lion is Leo and the man is Aquarius. These form opposing signs. There's a billion different ways you can word things that show patterns in the heavens. So are you starting to see the great implication of this so far? This means that at the very, very, very least, the Bible is not meant to be taken literally. So let me read this to you again, because I read this to you at the beginning. This might make more sense now. What is the point of this? We take for granted we have calendars, clocks, watches, weathermen. The ancients didn't have any of that. They had sundials. In the Bible, they worked on dream interpretations for harvest. They had to know things. They needed to know Taurus was when you put the plow on the bull and plant as above, so below. The Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac, and was the knowledge of staying alive the most important thing. They would look at the stars and see all the movement and make up stories about them and pass them down to their children, then them to their children. Eventually they learned how to write, and they wrote them down, and they evolved from Sumerian to Babylonian to Egyptian to Judaism to Christians to the Muslims. It's in everything, and I will show you that in the second half. My point, once again, is not that those ancient people told literal stories and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically and we are now dumb enough to take them literally. So just a few more things to show you how this works in society. The U.S. was not founded as a Christian nation. Christianity is the most perverted system that ever shone on man. That's Thomas Jefferson. I have found Christian dogma unintelligible. It's Benjamin Franklin. This would be the best of all possible worlds if there were no religion in it. John Adams. The Constitution is the guide which I will never abandon. That's George Washington. The U.S. was founded upon secular views. But let me give you a few more quotes. And the day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus, by the Supreme Being as his Father in the womb of a virgin, will be classed with the fable of the generation of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter. That's Thomas Jefferson in a letter to John Adams. What influence, in fact, have Christian ecclesiastical establishments had on civil society? In many instances, they have been upholding the thrones of political tyranny. In no instance have they been sent as the guardians of the liberties of the people. That's James Madison. The purpose of separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe in blood for centuries. James Madison. And this is my favorite quote. This is Thomas Paine. This is 250 years ago, one of the founding fathers. The Christian religion is a parody on the worship of the sun, in which they put a man called Christ in the place of the sun and pay him the adoration originally paid to the sun. That's Thomas Paine, 250 years ago. They used to know this stuff. But again, like I said, we are now dumb enough to take them literally. Now check this out. Why do they always crash the stock market in Libra? Look at this pattern here. Panic of 1907, October 1907, Teddy Roosevelt. He was a Republican. Wall Street crash of 1929, October 24th, 1929. That's a cusp. That's a handover date to Scorpio from Libra. Herbert Hoover. He was a Republican. Black Monday, October 19th, 1987, Ronald Reagan. He was a Republican. October 13th, 1989, Friday the 14th mini crash. That's George H.W. Bush. He was a Republican. The stock market downturn of 2002, October 9th, 2002, George W. Bush. He was a Republican. 10% in most of the world's indices dropped, crash. Handover date to Scorpio, October 24th, 2008, George W. Bush. He was a Republican. Are you seeing the patterns here?
It is so interesting how it's like we see it, we think we know it, and there's a whole nother layer and level to it that...
They're all in October. They're all in Libra. They're all in Libra. Or actually, technically, the handover date is that 3-day period at the end of the sign, remember? So the energy is still there. Why Libra? Well, it's the... If you see what I'm doing right here, this is the scales. This is the judgment. We're being judged. They're forcing the crashes in October and with Republicans.
Which is interesting because if Scorpio is the betrayer, it's like,
correct.
Because they're forcing it, they're betraying us by forcing it on us.
See, now you're starting to think like I do when you say shit like that to me. That's how I think. That's how it comes about. Now we're in September already. We're going to be reaching Libra in 16 days. So, with a Republican in office and everything that's going around in the world, don't be surprised if there's a stock market crash. So, check this out. Roman Catholic Catechism 2116. This is what the Catholics teach their people. Would you agree with me so far that there's definitely astrology in the Bible?
I would definitely agree.
Okay, so all forms of divination are to be rejected. Recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead, or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future. Consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, interpretations of omens and lots. The phenomena of clairvoyance and recourse to mediums all conceal a desire for power over time, history, and in the last analysis, other human beings, as well as a wish to conciliate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear that we owe to God alone. Why would the Catholic Church tell you that astrology is evil if the whole book is basically based on it?
Well, I think the last part of that line sums it up as loving fear, is that's what they want you in, is that fear. And so if you understand the astrology, they can't put you in fear.
Exactly. You remember this movie right here, Face Off?
I do.
So Nicolas Cage's, let me show you let me prove to you that this is actually used in society and it's not just something that I just made up or hidden. What was Nicolas Cage's character's name and his brother's name in Face Off?
Oh, it's been so long since I've seen it, to be honest.
It was Castor and Pollux Troy. Those are the names of Gemini. Okay? What was John Travolta's character's name? It was Sean Archer. Who's the Archer?
Sagittarius.
Those are opposing signs. So they do embed this into music, into TV. There are a ton of characters in Harry Potter that are named after stars or constellations. You have Draco Malfoy, Pollux Black, Sirius Black, Andromeda Black, Regulus Black, Arcturus Black, Cassiopeia Black, Orion Black, and Cygnus Black. In the movie Batman Begins, everybody loved that movie, right? There's a demon star called Algol, which is fixed in Taurus. If you talk to astrologers, there's a lot of evil connoted with it. But guess what? The evil guy in Batman is Ra's al Ghul, who gets his name from Al Ghul. You remember this video, The Cranberries?
I do.
1990s song Cranberry. Well, 1990s. I forget when it was in the 90s, but song video for the Cranberry Zombie. Here's Dolores O'Riordan. She's painted gold like the sun. And her head dressing right here, these represent the rays of the sun. Much like Jesus and the crown of thorns. But is it that? Well, what's the next scene? You have the sun on the cross, and here are the little archers. Here's Sagittarius right here ready to take her out. So they embed this into music, into movies, they understand this. They just don't want you to understand it. But it's not just the Bible. If you don't know by now the Bible is not original, you still might have doubts. Here is 6,000 years of hidden astrological tests, going from 5 Sumerian tablets, the Babylonian Enuma Elish, the Code of Hammurabi, which is where the Jews get their punishments and code of ethics from, to the Egyptian Book of the Dead, to the Gnostic texts, all of them, to the Quran, to the Book of Mormon. I'm still working on the Apocrypha, the Ethiopian Bible, and the Colburn Bible, but they are all the same. And Mike, that's the first half of my presentation. What do you think?
I think it's just as powerful as when I saw it in a few months ago in July, and it's like I see it and I get it when I'm looking at it, but it's like my mind just, I guess, isn't wired like yours to where I can retain it, see it, and then be like, every time I see that, it's like, oh, I remember this was this, but how did this go? And so I'm glad you're
Well, that's what I tell people when I'm going through the 12 signs. I go, I don't expect you to remember the key words. You know, you're not being tested on this. The only thing I want you to do as I'm going through these 12 words and as we go through the astrological breakdowns of the history of the Bible is just to be like, I remember him saying that. Okay, that's cool because I remember him saying that. That's all you need. You just need that to float with this.
Right. I was getting more as I was watching it this time because it's like I remembered from the first one. So as you were talking about, I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that, and this led to this, and then you would say it, and I'd be like, "That's right, that's how that keyed to this," and so I was able to remember more.
Mm-hmm. So I just want everybody to know that if you're interested in seeing breakdowns, I'm going to be back soon, but my website is debunkmywork.com. Debunkmywork.com. And if you go there, you could see the full book of anything. Because I'm only giving a couple examples out of everything. I mean, we did the book of Matthew and the book of Revelation. We did those two. But there's a lot more left in the Bible. I've broken down everything. So if you want to see that, my books are there. My social media is there if you want to reach out to me. But I think that should be enough for today. So, Mike, thank you for having me on, man. And thank you for being so receptive to this. I'm telling you, there is something really awesome to this.
Yes, and I was so appreciative of you reaching out and, even floating in the Gulf and saying, "Can I do my presentation on your show?" That really touched me, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I would love to because I feel like this is information that really does need to be out there and not stuck on a shelf." And people are like, "Well, I want to know this, but I don't know who to ask." And I'm like, here's who you ask. Here's a great source.
Right.
And so hopefully that's what these episodes will do is help those that are looking and seeing what you're seeing but not understanding fully what they're seeing look at this and go, "Oh, he's taking it where I need to go," and maybe even go further.
Because once you begin to understand this, the fear of the Bible just goes away.
Well, and I think the fear of the religion goes away too because you start to understand where they're coming from and being like, "No, this is not what you're saying. This is not what they're saying, and you have no power over me because I know what you're trying to do." And so there's that as well. And thank you so much. And one thing I'd like to say real quick before we totally end this is congratulations on what you're doing in life, and thank you for that. And from my heart and my show to you, thank you for your service to humanity and all that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll be in touch. Just DM me when I can come back on.
I will, and thank you so much.
Thank you very
And
much. Take care.
have a good one. And thank you all for your patience in waiting for this episode. And we will bring you part 2 when we get it scheduled. So please like, subscribe, and follow to this channel so that you can be informed when part 2 does come. So thank you for watching. Thank you to everyone, and have a wonderful day.